Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome back to my shop. Today's video, we're going to go over the build for this outfeed table I put together from a new table saw. And this is definitely a welcome addition to this shop space. It was desperately needed, and I think you'll see why. So, video's already long enough, so let's get to it. I'll see you on the other end. So the build for this table starts with pretty much any build of this sort. We're going to take a bunch of 2x4s and we're going to cut them down into smaller 2x4s. These are all from, big blue box store, so their condition will vary. Some will be straight-ish, some will be less so. So here I'm starting off by cutting what will be the longest ones for this table. These will be about 6 feet long, and these will be the sides for my top of the table. The top is going to wind up being 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. The bottom will be a few inches shorter to account for the mobile base I have on my table saw. So we are starting at the miter saw. We're going to cut these down, and then we will move them over to the table saw in the planer, and we'll use those to cut off the rounded edges, and then I will cut them down to 3 inches wide, and I'll plane them down to a thickness of 1 3/8. That way I have uniform size through everything, and that's a good size that works for this table build. Here we just moved on to the second of the 2 boards. I do want to give a little bit of a shout out here to Travis at Shop Nation. His dust collection for this miter saw improved it 1,000-fold. It's so much better. You guys should go check it out. Now with this cut, you'll see pretty much why I'm building this outfeed table. This cut will probably be described by many as the technical term of sketchy. So here I am. I'm just going to run a quick pass down the one side so that I can cut off the rounded edge to it. That's that rounded edge that comes with every 2x4 these days for some reason. And this is basically just taking the curve of the blade, so roughly 1/8 of an inch. We'll clear that off, and then go through here and push this through using the big overarm dust collector as well as in the cabinet. Works pretty well. And now we see why an outfeed table is so important. And here will be the first of many mistakes I make during this build. I actually trimmed off the edge, and then I moved the fence to cut it down to 3 inches, and I still have another board to cut. I will learn from this and only do this the one time, and going forward I'll do the cleanup edge on each board, and then I will reset the fence and cut each board down to the 3 inches. Again, this is why I need an outfeed table. Now we're going to take these 2 over to my helical head planer after I knock all of my clamps on the floor back there. You may have noticed. We're cutting the second board here, and then we'll be moving over to the planer. Fun fact, I had a sawhorse behind me this whole time and forgot to pull it forward to help me contain these boards to help me feed them through. I also had another one that wasn't in use at the time that I could have used to help catch these and didn't even think of it. So learn from this. I'd also like to point out that this is the first video I made using a new camera that I bought, so the focus might be a little wonky for a little bit. And I've obviously forgot that there was one there while I was planing, and then remembered, hey, there's basically somebody standing behind me. So I ran these through the planer. It is a helical head. which is nice. Makes it nice and clean. Everything comes out pretty smooth. I take about a 64th of an inch each pass. And I'm planing these down to a final thickness of 1 3/8. For our metric friends overseas, that's, I don't know math. Um, and basically, that's all I'm doing here is just get them down to the thickness. With regular hardwoods, it also helps clean them up and make them look a little prettier. But let's be honest, trying to pretty up a store-bought 2x4 is the woodworking equivalent of putting lipstick on a pig. So we do the best we can. And then here I am cutting the next two. These will be for the bottom platform on the table. These were cut to 5'4" or 64 inches total. And again, this is because on my table saw, I actually have the Saw Stop industrial cabinet saw with the conversion for the professional cabinet saw. And so the frame and wheels for it stick out behind the saw, roughly 8 inches. So I shortened up the bottom to give me a chance to actually allow that table to snug up to the back of that table saw, and then not have a gap for sawdust and tools and short boards to fall down through. That also leaves an area for my dust collection hoses to run through. This was also the first time I tried using a marking knife to mark my spot instead of a pencil. Results were mixed. I will have to continue to use it and see what I think of those going forward. You'll probably see me use a combination of pencils, chalk, and marking knives going forward as I continue to go back and forth with things and figure out which one I like best. And this was the point where I realized that, power tools work a lot better when you reach under here and turn the power on. Double checking the measurements, fighting with the tape measure. It's all part of woodworking. And I treated these the same treatment with the table saw, cutting it down to 3 inches wide, running it through the planer to get the thickness down to 1 3/8. Again, I did that with all the boards I cut for this, so we'll just zip through this planer piece real quick, and then we'll move on. And then here I'm got everything together. This is the basic layout I went with for both top and bottom. I went with 3 boards across the middle there. For support, I wanted to go ahead and put a middle board in, and you see here I'm marking center. Since it's 64 inches, I put it at a 32-inch center for the frame. This will help with support for the 3/4 inch plywood that I'm putting on this, and prevent any future sagging, as well as help with being able to carry more weight. And you'll see as we go through that I wind up putting 6 legs on this, so they basically line up with each of those boards there across the middle. And this is how I went about doing it. A couple of parallel clamps to help pull everything close together. I have a right angle clamp in there to help keep the corner joint square, and then it's just drill a couple of holes and then fill those holes with screws. For the first part of this build, I had completely forgotten that I bought myself a brand new battery for my second drill, and so I'm doing everything with a single Bosch hand drill, where I just swap bits back and forth between drilling the holes and putting in the screws. A couple of days later, I will remember I have this battery and make my life much easier. Little drill here, little screw there. The next thing you know, we have an attachment point. It seems like an excellent time to remind you that I'm also still new to YouTube and video editing, and I will eventually figure out how to put something that sounds better than me on this video. That little bowl of screws is actually magnetic. It's a set of screws that I had reclaimed from some other shop furniture that I had built and had since torn down and reclaimed the plywood and all the screws from, and I figured this would be a good place to use all those screws and try to get them used up and out of my way. And again, more drilling, more screwing. Because let's face it, in woodworking, if you're not screwing something down, you're probably screwing something up. At least in my shop. And another reason I'm building this outfeed table is so that I no longer have to crawl around on the floor like a lunatic, because I am too old for this, and I believe my knees may be even older than I am. So at this point, I've gone through and cut up all my 2x4s, got them to the sizes that I want. These pieces here that I'm messing with, these are the full length legs. And what I'm doing is I will turn these into a half lap system in order to rest the two platforms on. So this portion here, I'm taking a small block that I cut to about 2¼ inches in height to set down here, and this will be on all 6 of the legs, and this is what the lower platform will actually rest on until I get it screwed in. But this will allow any weight and tension on that lower platform to kind of transfer through the wood into this block, into the feet that I'll put on there, which helps transfer all that load into the floor, and it's a solid, steady build. So I'm just using the clamp here to keep it from sliding around side to side. I will come through and I'm going to pre-drill some holes. And then once I get the holes pre-drilled, you'll see that I put a layer of Type Bond 1 wood glue on here. It is fantastic. Open time is fine for what we're doing here, and it's got a very strong hold once it sets. I put 3 holes in this. I will shortly afterwards realize my mistake, because I'm going to come back through and drill a 1/2 inch hole 2 inches deep so that I can put in the feet that I chose to use for this table. That hasn't dawned on me yet at this point in the project. At this point, I think I'm doing pretty good. And then using this clamp to make sure it stays side to side, and using the edge that's closest to the camera allows me to make sure I get everything lined up back exactly where it was, so that those holes that I pre-drilled will line back up. If they're a millimeter or so off, it's okay, because as you run the screws through, since you've pre-drilled, it will actually pull that block back into position, and everything will line up pretty good. And again, I'm just using some basic construction screws that you get at your big box stores. Big Blue in this case. And then I just go through and do this 5 more times so that I have the 6 legs. And fortunately, shortly after I did this one, I realized that the center screw wouldn't work, so I only put 2 screws in the other legs. And that's what it looks like when it's all said and done. Now I just got to do a total of 6 times. And we jump forward, and there they are. There's the 6 legs with their feet on them. Yay me. All right, moving forward now, we come to the part where I actually drill that 1/2 inch hole I was telling you about. Start off by finding center. I'm just using this square I got from Jessam. No, I'm not sponsored. I just really like their stuff. So now, I mean, if Jessam wanted to reach out, I would answer the phone for them, I'm sure. But we use this method, just corner to corner. X marks your spot. That'll help you find center. And then I just run that drill bit right down through there. And I've got the blue tape on there to mark my 2-inch depth. I wanted to make sure I kept track of that because I'd only done the small block to about 2¼ inches or just a little touch over. So I didn't want to go over that. Also wanted to make sure I had plenty of room inside that hole for the feet to screw in. So I stopped halfway, brushed the sawdust away from the hole, and then having that little flag on that piece of tape means that when you get down to the hole, it cleans it off for you. So that worked out really well. And then I'm using a self-centering drill bit that usually gets used for hinges, but you'll see here's the threaded insert for those feet, and it's got the same kind of screw holes in it that a lot of your hinges do. So this self-centering bit worked really well to get the holes drilled out. And then I was able to just take the Phillips head screws that came with it, run them right through it, and secured it really good. They all seated very nicely, and it did pretty well. These are just some feet that I found on Amazon and grabbed them on there. You can just find, if these aren't to your liking, they have hundreds of others. So. And then once the 3 screws are set, it's just a matter of turning this, because this is just a big bolt, and get it set down in there. After I get it set in, I go ahead and take it all the way in to make sure that the threads are clean and that they go through, they feed well. Then I set it back up to 1¼ inch. I set all 6 of the feet to 1¼ inch as a starting point, because I knew that would give me plenty of space to take these and adjust the legs either up or down in order to help me level the table later. And I use that 1¼ inch in order to set the overall length of the leg. That 1¼ inch plus the 1.5 inches of the top I'm going to put on. And I apparently didn't remember to push the button whenever I actually attached the 3/4 inch plywood to the bottom frame, but there it is in all of its glory. It was a very simple attachment. I just went around the outside, all 4 sides, pre-drilled a few holes, ran some screws through into the 2x4s, and secured it down, and it's not going anywhere. Now the screws I'm using aren't actually the kind that say you don't need to pre-drill, but they are self-tapping. But I recently watched a video, I believe his name is John, 5 Duck Studios, who did a video about pre-drilling or not pre-drilling. And he made a comment in that video that I had heard in the past and kind of forgotten. But since we know that pre-drilling is really kind of the right way to do it, his comment was, well, if you don't have time to do it right, what makes you think you have time to do it twice? So in my ever ongoing effort to learn patience, I decided to take the time, pre-drill each of these holes. And I will say, I think it worked much better than just trying to force it through. So here I'm just clamping the first of the legs down onto the corner piece over there. I am using one clamp to hold it down to the side and another clamp to hold it up against the bottom. And then once I use the square to make sure everything lines up the way I want it, Then I just come back and I drill 3 holes and run through 3 screws. Now the reason I'm doing this with 3 holes in a triangle pattern, the part of the frame directly underneath this, that's where I already ran 2 screws through the outer 2x4 into the end of the end piece to attach the two together. So I knew I couldn't run screws through there and do a standard 4 position box type of joint for this. So I chose to go with 3 screws. I put 2 in the side that's currently closest to the camera because that side that didn't have any kind of screws or anything in it. And then on the side that's furthest from the camera, I marked out the spot that was the halfway point between the 2 screws I'd already driven, and I was able to tap in and drill another hole and run a screw through that. I believe this will work pretty well. This keeps it from moving. This secures it from being able to rotate, and it's basically a pyramid shape, and the ancient Egyptians built pyramids, and they've lasted 5,000 years, and I only need this table to last me a couple. So I'm pretty sure that this will work okay. And I did that with all 4 of the corner legs in order to get everything attached. Now on the 2 legs that I put in the middle, as you'll see me do one here in just a moment, because of course first we have to drill and screw and drill and screw and drill and screw. And again, I've only got the one drill because I forgot. Anyway, there I am, somewhat pleased with myself. On the middle ones, I actually was able to go ahead and straddle the 2 screws that I used to attach the edge piece to the middle piece, which meant that I could go ahead and do the standard 4-screw square pattern to attach these middle legs in and be able to secure them from any kind of racking or twisting later on. So time will tell, but I think it'll hold up pretty well. And then here on the leg, it's going to be close enough you can actually get a look at that pattern I was talking about with the 2 on one edge and 1 centered on the other edge. Again, these are, I believe, 2.5-inch screws running through here. So plenty of bite, lots of thread in both 2x4s that are being used here. So I think it'll last more than long enough and meet the needs of my shop. So. And there's the base, all assembled. I went through and did the same thing on the second side and got it all put together. And now here is where the longer boards come into play. And what I'm doing here is I've got them butted up against the table saw. And I'm going to come back through and I'm going to mark the ends on the very end. And then I'm going to lift them up, square them up with the table, and then mark the bottom. And that's going to allow me to mark a spot that I can go through and cut out in order to give me enough space to actually have the top part of those 2x4s then overhang and go up onto the table saw itself, onto the black part, not up onto the cast iron, of course. And that would allow me to get the top of the table butted up against the edge of the cutting surface for the table saw and allow me to not have a gap for small items to fall through. And that was one of the things I wanted to make sure I had. Again, just pretty simple, just a couple of pencil marks and away we go. And at this point, I've moved over, and this is just using the jigsaw to cut out those notches I was talking about. I'm actually able to clamp them to a table that I had picked up to go onto my drill press. Works out really well. It's about 2 foot by 18 inches, give or take. So this is working out really well for me. So, and this is just a simple cut jigsaw, and then just knock out that notch, and there it is. Now, do the same thing on the second one, and then I can take them back and make sure that they fit the way they should. Um, I did notice my MDF table was moving a little, so that was me tightening it down to keep it from walking away from me. Now that I got the notches cut out, I just bring them back, set them in place, and make sure it's going to work the way I had thought it would. And lo and behold, it actually did. So uh, believe me, I'm as shocked as you are. Now, at this point, you can see the clamps that I've got down there. They're holding in the other part of the half lap I had mentioned earlier. And I just got them in place for right now to hold them so I can do this testing. And that is a piece of 2x4 that is the same 1.5 inch thickness that my top is going to wind up being. So I was using that to see if I was going to be within the tolerances I had set, so that I could change the height as needed. And as you can see there, I'm just a smidge over, so I'm actually within my tolerance. Now you can see I actually remembered I had the battery for my second drill by the third day, and it made some of this a lot easier. So I'm just going through and running 3 holes through each of these, and then I will come through and put in wood glue, and then we will screw them down, and that should hold them for quite some time, actually, which is important because in this state, or in this case, these boards will be the ones that the primary top is actually on, and this will again allow the weight to transfer from whatever's on that top down through this half lap construction, and help transfer some of that load all the way down into the floor, and prevent the top of this bench from warping or buckling or bowing on me. And I decided to go with the 6 legs to provide that extra piece of support in the middle to actually help prevent the potential for bouncing in the middle by having it unsupported. Even though it's going to be an 1.5 inch thick top of plywood and MDF sitting on 2x4s, I figured I'd go ahead and over-engineer just a little bit and prevent that potential for any kind of bouncing later on. And then once I got the first side finished, all 3, and wiped down any glue schmutz that had squeezed out, I went ahead and did the other side. This is going to show you why I built the table to the size I did. Again, I didn't get any footage or any good footage of cutting the plywood that will be used for the top. So this is me cutting the MDF. Of course, the MDF is a little oversized anyway. It's actually 97 by 49 instead of 4 foot by 8 foot. And I'm using this Craig AccuCut system to line this up and cut it. I'm of an opinion, the more I use it, the less I like it. It's not bad, and I'm sure a lot of this is user error. I'm just not doing it right. It doesn't really have a good way to clamp it down once it's in place. It doesn't like the dovetail clamps that I have, so I'm going to be using this speed square to try to keep this end squared up as I get started, and then cut this down. And then it's at this point that I realize that power tools work a lot better with power, so that's a thing. Hey, don't laugh, someday you'll be old too. And you'll see, you can kind of see underneath there, I've got it set up on some sawhorses with some sawdust on a concrete garage floor. And so coming up here in just a few seconds, you will see why I am building the table the size that I am, because it will allow me to work sheet goods on that table instead of on sawhorses. I feel I should preemptively say that no, nobody was hurt, no tools were damaged. And you really shouldn't lean on it like that either, because gravity is real. Fortunately, the wife hasn't seen that yet. I'm sure I'll hear all about it later. Speaking of the wife, she decided to come out and help me with the contact cement. I actually found a version of this contact cement that is a gel base. So if you see it plopping down there, no, it's not gone bad. That is a gel. It flops out of the can real nice, and it kind of sits there like Jello on a plate. It's real easy to spread, and it doesn't try to run away from you. It stays where you put it. My wife comes out and helps me with this because for some reason she likes to paint and I hate it. And this is close enough to painting that she just does it. So here we are putting contact cement on both the MDF and the Formica laminate that we're going to be used to cover the top. And this is a thing, you just spread this all over both surfaces. Let it sit for about 20 minutes to get tacky, and then you come back and you'll put it together. And it is a immediate bond like cement. And you just use, as you saw there in her hands, you just use a regular old paint roller to do it. And then after the 20 minutes is up, you come back, you put some sticks on to keep them from immediately attaching to each other. Line everything up the way you want it. And then you get a roller. The one I got was actually marketed as a roller for hardwood floors, but it works really well for this. And then you start there in the middle and apply pressure from the middle out and do it all the way across the entirety of your sheet. You can see as I'm putting the pressure down that that MDF is bowing just a little bit. And that's what I was talking about, trying to get away from the bow and the bounce by having the legs in the middle. So you just go through and make sure you run that roller over every square inch or square millimeter, centimeter, whatever you want to call it. Get it all nice and flat and level. And then once you've done that for a few minutes, get yourself a nice little workout there. And then you'll be all set and good to go. And it'll be ready to move on. And here I'm starting the assembly of the top frame. You can see it looks just like the bottom frame with a little bit of a hangover on the front edge of it there. And again, it's just another case of drill holes, fill holes with screws, using the parallel clamp to keep it together and the right angle clamps there on the corners to try to keep everything as close to square as it can be with bulk stored 2x4s. I will say this came out much closer to square than I anticipated. Once I was all said and done, I was less than 1/16 of an inch off from completely square, which using these 2x4s for shop furniture is pretty good in my opinion. Opinions may vary. And then just like the other side, you do one, you got to do all the rest of them. So I just kind of went side to side on this one and got everything locked in. And it came out, I think, pretty good, as you'll see later. once I got it all fastened together, just carried it over and set it on top of those half flaps that I had glued and screwed previously. Uh, Made sure it all set up against the table saw there with the overlap. I did have to scoot the table just a little bit so I could get the ends to line up and put everything right where I wanted it. But overall, it came out pretty good. Then I went through and added some clamps in preparation of, once again, drilling holes and filling holes with screws. I will say, these little squeeze clamps worked out pretty well for a lot of this. These are just those blue Irwins you can get all over the place, and they work out pretty well. And then, as I said, we went through and I actually repeated the pattern on the top that I was talking about in the bottom with doing the 3 screws in a triangle pattern on the corner legs, and then doing a 4 screw square in the middle. And again, really seems to have worked out pretty well. Time will tell, but it feels solid, and I think we'll be in good shape. And then here I am attaching the 3/4 inch plywood to the top frame. Just marking my edges of the inner 2x4 so that I can then come back and drill my pilot holes and make sure that they actually go into the 2x4 and not just into open air. I did this down the 2 long sides because I put this in such a way so that I would have slight overhangs on those 2 sides for me to use for clamping things later on. And again, just the same 2.5-inch construction screws to hold everything in place. And of course, along the back, it was much easier because the back of the plywood flushed up with the back of the frame. And then it was more gluing in this case. Again, the wife came out to help because this is very similar to painting. The important thing here is to make sure you don't have any dry spots when you get done. So we used a not insignificant amount of glue to cover everything here. And this is Type Bond 2. And the only reason I went with the Type Bond 2 here instead of the 1 is because this is the one I had the big jug of. So I knew I had plenty. And then, as I said, she saw a dry spot, came back and filled it. And then it's just position the MDF and laminate in place, get it lined up on the edges the way I wanted it, and then use almost every clamp I own to clamp it in place. There was one 2x4 that I bought that was way too crooked to use in the construction, but it worked out really good as a call for this. So I thought I would go ahead and put that in place there, and it worked out really well. Then we continued to add more clamps and again, more clamps. I'm running this at like 800% speed because this took several minutes because of the number of clamps. And then we added some old dumbbells that we had in the house in the middle to help add a little extra pressure through the center, just to kind of help make sure that nothing tried to run away on us. Because you know how these things do that. And there it is after all the clamps and dumbbells. Then I just let it sit overnight. It set for about 18 to 20 hours. Then I came back and took all of that off of it. And there was the finished product. And there's the shop foreman giving his opinions, deciding whether or not it was okay. He seemed okay with it. And then you see it's a good sized, I think it's a good sized surface. We're in 6 foot by 4 foot. Gives me plenty of aisle to walk around all sides of it in order to be able to work and carry things. And it feels pretty solid when I sit on it. And then there's the shop supervisor come to give her opinion. She seemed less excited. And then here it is with my table saw butted up against it. And I was able to adjust the feet as I needed to level it out and get it to be actually just slightly under the cutting surface, so that everything would slide really well. And there's my test piece of 2x4 using earlier. And you can see here that it does slide across real well. And there it is. That's how it came together. Well, what you just saw took me about 5 days in my shop based on my schedule. Based on yours, what you got, you could probably knock it out in a day, definitely within a weekend. And I'll say it's going to get a lot of use, and it's definitely made the shop a lot safer. So no more sketchy cuts for me. Look for a pinned comment down below. I'm going to put links for our website as well as for the YouTube channels for Shop Nation, so you can go check out his dust collection for the miter saws. I'm also going to see if I can't find that video from 5 Duck Studios I was talking about that talks about the pre-drilling before screwing. I think it's really interesting and you'll get a lot out of it. He does a really good job. So look for those. If you have any comments, feel free to add them down below. As always, thanks for watching to this point. I'm glad to have you here. If you enjoyed what you saw, hit that thumbs up and let me know. And if you want to see what I'm doing next, then hit that subscribe button and keep up with us. And that lets the YouTube know that other people may want to see this. So thanks again for coming. I'm glad to see you. Until then, be good to each other. I'll see you the next one. Bye.